Only 5 days to go before Christmas Eve. I was frantically working out in my gym, practicing my technique for dropping down the chimneys without the possibility of getting stuck. You see, I'm very, very good at that. Mrs. Claus arrived with the morning post and informed me of the exciting news that my storybook had arrived from the publishers. Suddenly, Yodel came running in a rather agitated state of panic. Santa, Harry the Snowman has run away. I calmly assured Yodel that there was nothing to worry about, and that I would personally sort out Harry's problems and bring him back home safe and sound. I told Yodel to alert the elves and begin a search whilst I headed back to the stable for my sleigh. I took to the skies to find Harry, and as I looked down, I could see him alone in the snow, heading away from Santa's village. I flew down and jumped beside him, but he ignored me and just kept walking. "Jump aboard, Harry!" I beckoned, but he just kept on walking away. I shouted again, "Harry, please listen to me!" He slowly turned around with a tear in his eye. "Harry," I said, "there comes a point in everybody's life when they feel like running away, but that is not the answer. Please, tell Santa your problems." Harry broke down. "No one ever listens to me. No one has time for me," sobbing quietly. I'm just a stupid, worthless snowman." I walked over to Harry and hugged him. "Harry, my boy, you are not worthless. Dry your eyes, wipe your face. Why, I'm going to show you how important you really are. Jump aboard, Harry." I looked at Rudolph, and he had his head hung low. "Rudolph, take to the skies," I ordered. Rudolph looked at me and smiled, and off we went to prove to Harry how important he really was. As we traveled around the world, I showed Harry millions of snowmen, all built by children having fun with the help of their friends and their family. I told him, building snowmen brings people together. Harry, imagine a Christmas without a snowman. Imagine our family without you. Come on, Harry, let's go home where you belong. Rudolph, take us home, I commanded. Why, the mood changed in the sleigh, and everybody was happy. We approached the North Pole, and I looked down from the sleigh. I could see written in the snow in huge letters, "Welcome home, Harry, we love you." Why, everybody from Santa's village was there to welcome Harry back home. This made Harry so happy. I thought to myself, Harry could have made a big mistake by running away, but that is not the answer. Just talk to someone, and you will find a caring spirit who has time for you and truly cares. Well, having returned a happier Harry back to the fold, I moved on to more pressing issues by reading my mail. Still excited about the news of my new storybook, when the contents of a particular letter greatly disturbed me. Gravely, I turned to Mrs. Claus and asked in distress, "Can you please pack my bag, dear? I need to go to the city. It appears that the people have lost their Christmas spirit. I have also received a letter from a little girl asking for her daddy to come back home and be part of their family again." Well, I immediately set off in my talking car, Stancer, and I was unaware that Yodel had hid himself in the trunk of the car. During the journey, I explained to Stancer that since it was so close to Christmas, I was going to replace the Mall Santa and share my new storybook with all the children in an effort to regain their hearts the true spirit of Christmas. When we arrived at the mall, I noticed a sign in the shop window, "Santa Wanted." At the same time, I noticed a Santa look-alike being evicted from the mall exit. Why, I took pity on the poor fella, and after inquiring about the mall Santa job, and of course being duly accepted, I insisted that the manager should take pity on the other fellow and, well, employ him as a gesture of goodwill. After all, it is Christmas. The manager agreed, and offered the other mall Santa the job of the store janitor. Well, I observed the crowds in the mall and noticed a distinct absence of any Christmas spirit. Too bad. Well, I was suddenly distracted by a commotion outside on the street. I went to the mall entrance to see what all the fuss was about. I then noticed a traffic cop trying to pin a parking ticket on Stancer. But the mischievous little car was having none of it. And so the crowd started to gather, greatly amused by his teasing of the hapless traffic cop, while the adults were distracted by this unexpected comedy show. While for the children, the appearance of Santa at the door attracted them and excited them. I returned into the mall, and the children followed. I saw a great opportunity to sit down and read the children my first story. Children, gather round. Come, sit by me. Well, as I said that with a tempered heart, they huddled around and sit around me with their eyes wide open in wonderment. There are days when I am sitting quietly alone by the fireside. I often think what people and children really think of me. Now, I know you all look at me and ask yourselves, well, do you like me? Do I look jolly? Well, I hope the answer to this question is yes. The children nodded their heads in agreement. I continued in my warmest voice. During these quiet moments, I also get very nostalgic. And I remember a time long ago when, as a boy, I wasn't jolly at all. In fact, I was so unhappy because I thought I was never any good at anything. As hard as I tried, I was never top in the class. I was never picked for the football team. I couldn't even run as fast as the other boys and girls. One day, feeling very unhappy and sorry for myself, I decided to take a walk on my own to the enchanted forest. Feeling ever so miserable, I walked with my head held down, hands in my pockets, stubbing my toes on the ground, when I suddenly saw a beautiful robin redbreast lying still in the grass. It had a broken wing. Oh, you poor thing, I said softly, as I picked him up gently. Where do you live, little robin? Tell me, and I will take you home immediately. But the robin looked at me sadly and said, I live in the castle at the end of the rainbow. Now I may have thought of myself as an unhappy, lonely boy who was no good at anything. But even then, I always wanted to be kind and helpful. And so, with the little robin redbreast cradled safely in my hands, I started to follow the rainbow. For miles I walked, uphill and down dale, across rivers and through valleys, until daylight passed and the sky started to turn dark. Suddenly, in the distance, there was a beautiful, magical castle perched high on a hill, well, surrounded by Christmas trees whose twinkling lights seemed to dance in the moonlight. Oh, at last, I found the end of the rainbow. I walked up the hill in wonder at the beautiful, enchanting sight before me, hardly believing my eyes. Why, I pushed firmly on the huge golden gates at the entrance of the castle, and they opened wide, as if they were expecting me. Imagine my surprise when, as if by magic, the little robin flew out of my hand, his wing no longer broken, and perched on a branch of the tree. Standing next to him, there was a shadowy figure of an old man. I looked closer, and I realized it was old Father Time. Welcome, little Santa, he said in a kind but firm voice. We have been waiting for your arrival for thousands of years, and tonight you have proved to us, with your kindness, you are the true spirit of Christmas. But I'm just a sad, lonely little boy who's not good at anything, I explained. That is nonsense. What is more important is that you are good at being good. You are a kind, thoughtful little boy. And from this day forward, you will be known as Santa Claus, the spirit of Christmas. And everyone will love you. and believe in you. Well, for the first time in my life, I felt good and happy. And it didn't really matter anymore whether I was fast or clever. But what really mattered was that I would always do my best to be good to others. Although this happened many years ago, whenever I feel sad, or that perhaps I'm not good at anything, I remember the kind words of old Father Time when he told me, "You only have to be good at being good." And I realized I am good at what I do best. I was reminded of this yesterday when somebody shouted after me, "Hey, Santa, you're the greatest guy on the planet." To which I replied, "There's a little Santa in all of us. All we have to do is find him within our hearts. So next time you see a rainbow, remember my story, boys and girls, and try to find the goodness of Santa within your own heart." Ooh, well, looking around, I had gathered quite a crowd. Even the new janitor Jim had a tear in his eye. I felt a bond between myself and the man whose job I saved. Jim then led me to the back of the mall, where the mall Santa stays on his breaks. Jim, now feeling he could trust Santa, opened his heart.
"Thanks, buddy, for persuading the manager to let me keep a job. You know, this place is awful. Some happy shopping mall. There's no Christmas spirit. Full of unruly teenagers. But I do need a job. Thanks. Anyway, my name's Jim. What's yours?"
"I'm Santa. Pleased to meet you."
"Santa? No! What's your real name?"
"Sorry, I forgot I was in the city. My name is Nicholas."
"Well, Nick, that story you told was good. Really cheered the young boy up. You know, Nick, when I was at school, I was the best at everything. And look at me now, all washed up. Nick, would you lend me a couple of dollars? I need a drink."
"Come on, Jim, I'll buy you a drink." Well, we head to the nearest bar, and I pulled out a $100 bill and handed it to Jim. I usually don't carry money, but Mrs. Claus insisted I needed money for the city. I usually give presents, not money. Imagine if everybody gave money at Christmas. Why, I would be out of a job. Jim goes to the bar and orders a double whiskey and shouts to Santa,
"Hey, Nick, what you gonna have, huh?"
"A small brandy, please." Jim returns with the drinks. I usually have mince pie when I have a brandy. Ho, ho, ho.
"Yeah, and a carrot for Rudolph, I suppose."
"Yes, Jim. Rudolph, I do miss him."
"Nick, you're a great guy. You're really good at being Santa, but don't you think you're just taking it a bit too far?"
"I'm only being myself." Jim downs a drink and orders another.
"Hey, Nick, would you like another drink, just to cheer things up a bit?"
No, Jim. Too much alcohol is bad for you. I could tell you a story about it, too much alcohol, but I must go. You enjoy your night, and I will see you at work in the morning. Now be careful." As I left, I headed towards Stanzer. I got in, flicked the switch, and the car turned into a bedroom with a giant television screen. And I talked to Mrs. Claus. Everything seemed to be going just fine up at the village, and the head elf had taken control, and production was going good, and I felt at ease. I went to sleep. The next couple of days, the crowds grew in huge numbers to take pictures with me and to listen to the stories and to see Stanzer, my magical, incredible car. Why, there are even rumors going around that a monster has been seen. The mall manager was now happy with the store being full of people. He decided to go get into the Christmas spirit and fix the Christmas lights. That day, after the mall finally closed, Jim walked me back to the room. Sensing Jim was missing his own family, I set him down and shared a special story with him. Gently, I said, "Jim, I know why I wrote this story, and it's just for you. I'm going to tell you the story of how I met Yodel Elf. It all happened long ago, after walking Snowy for a walk one day. Well, we would always walk along the same path every morning, and sometimes I would see huge footprints in the snow. Why, I often wondered if it could be the footprints of a Yeti. But then I would tell myself that was not possible, because we're here in the North Pole and everything is magical and nice. We don't have such monsters. Well, the more I thought about these footprints, the more I wanted to find out who they belonged to. So one day, with Snowy by my side, I decided to follow them. Why, we followed them for miles and miles, when all of a sudden, the weather began to change. The once blue sky suddenly turned dark and stormy, and it began to snow very heavily indeed. I realized we were lost. Snowy, I said with a little tremor in my voice, I think I will have to call Rudolph and ask him to come and rescue us. Well, I reached into my pocket to get my mobile phone. When I dialed the number, to my dismay, I could not get a signal. The storm was brewing, and all communications were temporarily lost. Oh dear, what was I to do? I was becoming very cold, and the snow blizzard made it impossible to see anything around me. I'm sorry, Snowy, I said cheerily. We're lost, and the only thing to do is to wait until the storm blows over. Well, Snowy and I laid down in the snow and huddled together for warmth. Would the snowstorm pass soon? Would we survive the night? I was afraid and shivering from the cold. I soon fell asleep with Snowy by my side. When I awoke, to my surprise, I found that we were no longer outside in the snow, but under a big, fluffy blanket beside a huge, roaring fire. Well, and on the hearth stood 2 cups of steaming hot chocolate. Why, thankfully, someone very kind had found us and has saved our lives. But who could it be? And how did we get here? Just then, a big, cheerful-looking monster appeared before us and said, "Good morning, Santa. I'm Yodel." Oh, he had saved our lives, I thought to myself. Well, he told me that he lived by himself and he did not have a family of his own. I felt so sorry for him. He must be so lonely, when suddenly Snowy ran over to him and started to lick him with affection. "What? He's made of ice cream," Snowy barked. "Why, his tail was wagging with excitement. Imagine my surprise." But before I could ask him why he lived alone, Yodel told me that as a boy, Santa forgot and didn't visit him. And every year since then, he's never gotten any presents. Oh, how ashamed I felt, because until now I did not know Yodel even existed. Well, I told Yodel this year I would not forget him, and on Christmas Eve I would bring him a very, very, very special present. Well, I looked up in the sky, and the storm had passed, and I could see Rudolph, who had come for us. Yodel became scared and ran away before we could thank him. Rudolph landed, and both Snowy and I climbed into the sleigh with a sigh before flying home safely back to the North Pole. All the way home, I was thinking of Yodel. So when I landed, I went straight over to the head elf, and I whispered in his ear what I wanted him to make for Yodel. Well, Christmas Eve had arrived, and after delivering all the other presents, I then flew off to see Yodel. As I flew over the ice cap, I could see Yodel sitting down there all alone. And as I landed, I said, "Oh, Merry Christmas, Yodel." "Oh, Santa, where is your present? Your sleigh is empty. Have you forgotten me again?" He said so sadly. "Yodel, I told you that I would have a very special present this year for you. but it's too big to carry on the sleigh, so jump aboard, and I'll take you to see it." When we landed in the North Pole, Head Elf ran over to greet us. "Yodel's present is finished," he explained. "Come and see." He was very excited. We followed him around the corner, and there it was, an ice castle for Yodel to live in. Why, he would never be alone again. He would become part of our family in Santa's village. Yodel started to cry with happiness. "Oh, Santa, I'm so happy. I have always wanted to be part of a family." "Oh, now you are. You're a family, my dear friend," I assured him. "And from this day on, you'll be known as Yodel Elf." And from that day, it has been a wonderful thing to have Yodel around, especially for the elves that visit his ice castle every day, and they get an ice cream cone. And it's called Yodel Elf Treat because it's a different flavor every day. See, Jim, all Yodel ever wanted was just to have a family.
Yeah, I can see that. It was a really good story with a happy ending. That big guy, he got what he wanted, didn't he?
Yes, Jim, he's a great boy. He's like a son to me. I miss him. I wish he was here.
Yes, but it's just a story. An ice cream elf? Nick, you're off this planet.
He's my family. Jim, have you a family?
Yeah, I had a family. I had everything, and look at me now. I'm the guy who Springsteen wrote about in Glory Days. You know the one. I was the top man. I was the captain of the football team as well. I had a great family. I didn't appreciate it though. All I thought about was myself. I wish I had time to change things and go back and put it all right. I lost my job as well. I wasn't close to my family. I was the big shot with the big friends having a great time. Thinking about this number one, me. And where are all my friends now?
This was going to be tougher than I thought. Well, I had another idea. I would send a letter to Allie's school and invite the children to come see Santa. Well, I left to find Patrick the Pigeon Post, and as I passed Stancer, I caught Yodel getting out of the trunk of the car. Well, after a brief reprimanding, I started to laugh. I just had to forgive Yodel. After all, he was there to take care of me. Well, Christmas Eve had arrived, and the teacher brought the pupils to see Santa. "Children, line up and put your letters you got from Santa in your pockets," said the teacher. One by one, the children went up to sit on my lap and to take pictures. As Allie got near, I said to the cast members, "Get Jim to take over. I'm not feeling well." Jim agreed to take over, not knowing his daughter was in the line. And when Allie walked up, she did not recognize her dad. And the teacher said, "Okay now, Allie, tell what you want for Christmas." Well, she very sadly sat on Santa's lap and turned him right in the eye and said, "All I want for Christmas is my daddy to come home so that we can be a family again." Well, Jim couldn't speak as the tears welled in his eyes. And all the children had planned. I said, "Well, how do you feel?" He said, "I can't go home." He began to cry. I was holding him in my arms. I said, "Let me share one more story with you before I have to leave." You see, Jim, one morning, I was reading one of the hundreds of letters I received each day from children all over the world, and I came across a letter from a little girl asking for a kitten for Christmas. Well, I saw no problem with it, because she had been such a good girl all year. I decided that she would get what she deserved. Well, Jim, 1 year had passed, and on Christmas Eve, I loaded up my sleigh and went off to deliver presents. We went from house to house, landing on the roof if it had a chimney, and if it did not, we'd land in the garden of the house, and I would use my magic key. Well, I landed in one garden and noticed the house was in darkness. There were no Christmas lights. The house looked deserted. I checked my computer and pulled up the wish list to see if I had made a mistake or had come to the wrong house. There was a letter from a little girl living at this house wanting presents. I then suddenly remembered the little girl in the house. I had delivered a kitten there only last year. Well, we were in a dilemma. What should we do with the presents? I asked Rudolph, but he didn't know either. Snowy, my dog, jumped off the sleigh and ran over to the hedge. Well, I can see the eyes of a cat, Snowy explained. Quick, come look, Santa. So as I touched the snow over to the hedge, there was a little cat lying in the snow shivering. She was hungry and cold. I recognized her as being Allie, the kitten I had delivered 1 year ago. Oh my dear, she had been abandoned. I picked Allie up and wrapped her in my coat, trying to get her warm. Bring some hot milk and something to eat, I shouted. I then realized what a mistake I had made giving Allie as a present. A pet is for life, not just for Christmas. We delivered the rest of the presents and then off we went back to the North Pole with one extra guest and a set of toys that had not been delivered. I assured Allie that she'd become part of Santa's village, and I introduced her to everyone there. She would become a member of our family. I went back to my office and began checking my Christmas wish list to see what toys I should be delivering and where I should be delivering them. Well, I checked every house in the world, and just then my computer came up with the answer. One house showed no deliveries. Christmas Eve was not over. I jumped back on a sleigh and off we went to investigate. When I found the house and went down the chimney, I could see that it was a poor house and the family had fallen on hard times, which is why they had left the previous house and also their pet. I quietly went upstairs and there was a little girl asleep with a picture of Allie by her bedside. I realized then that although she still loved Allie, her family simply could not afford to keep the cat. This made me so sad. I left her presents and a letter telling her that Allie was now safe and well and had found a new home in Santa's village. And one day she would come back and visit her. Well, I prayed, Jim, that the fortunes of this family would change, but it taught me a lesson that we all should remember, especially at Christmas time. A pet is not a present, it's a family member. Now, Allie is a happy cat and loves visiting children just like Santa. And I looked deep into Jim's eyes. Jim, the little girl in that story was your wife. When she was a little girl, she lost something very, very dear to her that she loved. Please don't do that to her again. She loves you. Please, Jim, go home. Jim then built up the courage and headed home. His wife was putting up the Christmas tree. It was now Christmas Eve as Jim walked into his house, and she was so embarrassed that she was so happy that she asked why he had come home. He said, I've been working as a Santa, and Allie came and didn't recognize me since I was dressed as Santa. All she wanted for Christmas was her daddy. Jim pulls out a photo of Allie sitting on her lap, and with his heart pounding, he whispered to his lovely wife, now she's going to have her daddy forever. Please, honey, please forgive me. Jim hugged his wife. Darling, you wouldn't believe it if I told you, but I've been working with this guy who believes he is Santa, like so convinced, and I wanted to believe him, but he tells these fantasy stories and insists that they are true. He told me one of the stories was about you and your cat as a little girl and how you lost it. His stunned wife dropped to her chair. Jim, it is true, she said. That really happened. I couldn't tell you, but my family was so poor, I was scared that if I told you how poor we were, why, you wouldn't like me. As a matter of fact, I still have that letter. His wife ran upstairs. Jim followed her. She got the letter from 30 years ago, and it was the identical color of the one Allie was carrying in the mall. Jim went to Allie's coat to find the letter and the writing on it. Both letters' writing was identical, the same. Darling, I didn't believe, but now I do. I know. I'll be back. I promise, within the hour. Jim went running out the door into the mall. Is Santa still here? Is he around? The security guard answered, no, he's gone. Santa said he had a lot of work to do tonight. It's going to be a busy night, if you know what I mean. But I must see him, said Jim. Well, you won't see him tonight. You remember the song? Santa only comes when your eyes are closed, said the security guard jokingly. Well, during the night, on my route to delivering presents, I slipped down Jim's chimney and delivered a present for Dad, Mom, and Todd, and a card to thank them all for believing. Well, and as I was leaving, a cat rubbed up against my boot. Merry Christmas. Oh, oh, oh.